International trade, a very interesting learning module. We're going to talk about what are the benefits and cost of international trade, how countries can restrict trade, why they do it, what are the different tools that they use to do it, such as tariffs, quotas, and export subsidies, how they can allow international trade through agreements, what are the different trading blocks in the different regions of the world. So, as discussed, we will first talk about the benefits and the costs of international trade. Then, we will talk about how countries put restrictions on trade, why they do it, how they do it, what are the implications of doing that, and then how they allow it, what are the different trading blocks that allow trade among themselves in the different regions of the world. So let us now move on to first the benefits, then the costs. Now, the benefits are very, very interesting. And I would like to start with the example of France and Belgium. This is, of course, a hypothetical example. Let's say Belgium can produce 10 units of chocolate and 10 bottles of wine. And France can also produce 10 units of chocolate and 10 bottles of wine. Now, and they're not trading among themselves. So the Belgian people are having 10 chocolates and 10 bottles of wine, and the French have 10 chocolates and 10 bottles of wine. Now, instead of doing that, let's say France says we're not going to make chocolate, and Belgium says we're not going to make wine. Instead, Belgium focuses on making chocolate, and instead of 20, they are able to make 25 chocolates. France focuses on wine, and instead of a total of 20 units, earlier obviously they were both making a total of 20, 10 plus 10 each, but now Belgium is making chocolates only, and they are specializing in chocolates, and they can make more than they were earlier able to make overall. And France makes only wine, and they are able to make, let's say, 25 bottles of wine. Now, why such specialization or such volume is leading to a higher production? Because of something called economies of scale, and we have already studied this before, right? So I'm not going to go into the discussion about economies of scale, but there is, however, another point at play here, that maybe there is an environment in Belgium which is more conducive, more better for making chocolates, and maybe France has an environment which is better for making wine. Maybe they have cheaper raw material available locally, right? Maybe Belgium has better quality milk available. Maybe France has better quality of grapes available locally within their country. So if these two countries focus on their respective expertise, then what happens is that overall the amount of production goes up. So before, what was the production level before? France was producing 10 plus 10, which was 20, right? Belgium was producing 10 plus 10, which was also 20, and 20 plus 20 was 40, right? But now they are both making 25 each, and total they are making 50. Now, even if France keeps 25 divided by 2, even if they keep 12.5% bottles of wine, and they give rest to Belgium, and Belgium keeps 12.5% of chocolate and gives the rest to France. So now, compared to before, France has more wine and more chocolate, and Belgium also has more wine and more chocolate. So it's good for both to do this type of focused specialization and exchange. The countries can gain from exchange and specialization. I'd like to give you another example here. Let's say we talk about India, that is better at producing cloth. Why? Because production of textile is a very labor intensive process, and India has more labor available, cheaper labor available compared to, let's say, a country like Germany, where there is relatively less labor, but they have certain engineering expertise that they can make machinery. Now, it's not like Germany cannot make textile or India cannot make the textile machinery. They can both do both those things. But the question is, if Germany specializes in making the machinery and Germany is selling that machinery to not only India but also China and other countries, and India uses that machinery to make cloth and sells that cloth all over the world. So what will happen is that the two countries can then exchange the goods and benefit, because what will happen is India will be able to get a higher price for the cloth that they are making compared to if it sells it to its own people, right? It's making shirts, it can sell it to Indians or it can export it to Germany. It's probably going to earn more if it exports to Germany because they're going to earn in euros, which is having a better currency exchange rate compared to the Indian rupee. And then, of course, if instead of trying to make textile machinery locally, it could probably benefit by importing from Germany. Now, you might be thinking German machinery is going to be expensive. Yes, it is expensive. But if India probably tries to make the same quality of machinery locally, it's going to be even more expensive for India, because Germany is already having that expertise and they are not only producing it for India, they're supplying it to China and the US and probably many other countries across the world like Bangladesh and Vietnam. So Germany has specialized in producing this machinery, so it's probably going to be cheaper for India to buy that machinery from Germany, and it is probably going to bring more revenue for India to export the cloth. So this is the benefit of international trade. Then, of course, there are other benefits in terms of variety. So what happens is, when you allow international trade, not only do you start becoming more efficient because you can focus on your local industries, which you are having a competitive advantage on, but also everybody gets more variety, right? Initially, what we used to have are closed economies. So if we take the example of India before the Manmohan Singh era, what it was a closed economy that they would say, no, we are not going to import fridges or cars or TVs. We're going to make them locally. And to protect their local manufacturers, they would put taxes to discourage imports of international products. So that international products would be very, very expensive for the local people because there would be huge taxes on them. And therefore, the local people would be forced to buy the local goods. But then, because of that, what would happen is that the local industries would kind of get inefficient, right? They wouldn't really come up with the best features because they kind of had a captive market, right? So a closed economy is a captive market for the large domestic players. Now, that naturally breeds inefficiency because the local large domestic players, they're not forced to innovate. They're not forced to keep a very, very aggressive, wide range of product. The moment you open the economy, now it's not a captive market anymore, right? Now, products from other countries can come in and compete for this market. And those other companies like LG or Samsung from South Korea or Sony from Japan can then obviously come in, and or Toyota and Honda and Suzuki in terms of cars can come in and say, hey, we've got this product and would you like to buy it, to the local population. Now this is good for the people because they get variety. right? And the local domestic firms, what happens is that they are forced to be more efficient. And actually, it's not a bad thing. This is a whole uh, at a economy level. It's very good because then India can focus on what is the competitive advantage for its economy. Like for example, textile. So maybe India is not the best at making fridges or cars, but if it is the best at making textile or whatever, let's say software or back office software services like call centers or whatever. The point is that every economy then kind of finds its forte, its niche, its expertise, its competitive advantage, and focuses on increasing the production of that good and reducing the production of the imported good because you're not good at it. I mean, you're not bad at it. It's just that there are other people who are better at it, and you're better off buying the textile machinery from Germany, and maybe better off buying the cars from Japan, right? So on and so forth, and exporting your textile and your software to the whole world. So this results in a more efficient allocation of resources across not only the country but across different countries and the whole world, and increases the overall welfare of the entire global economy. And that is why globalization is so important, because then countries can focus on their areas of expertise and scale up, scale, and get the benefits of economies of scale, compete with global players, become more efficient, or of course go out of business if you are not up for coming to that level of efficiency. And extending the example of LG and Samsung, which we discussed in the previous slide, if you look at what happens, that when they came into the India and the Middle Eastern markets like UAE and Saudi and other South Asian markets like India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. So what happened was that they were able to achieve a lower cost of production. Companies like LG and Samsung, right? So this is just an example that further substantiate what we're saying, that when each country focuses on their area of expertise, not that the other country can't do it, it's just that some countries will have a natural advantage at something. For example, France might have it for wine, Belgium might have it for milk or chocolate, right? And it's and countries like India and China are naturally suitable for labor intensive work because they have huge populations. And focusing on such export oriented industries is very good for those countries as well. Now, take the example of Bangladesh and the garments that they stitch. They don't even have a cotton coming from locally. They're importing the cotton from Egypt and from India and Pakistan. But they have this labor which is very, very skilled, and they are able to work in this labor intensive industry, which obviously generates a lot of employment for their people, and they make fantastic garments. Now, this is where the benefits discussion ends, and it ends with a caveat that, hey, these gains from trade, they are there, but they're not there for everyone, and they're not there equally for everyone. Even if they are there for everyone, they're not equally there for everyone, and sometimes they're not there for some people at all. What does that mean? So let's say if you're in Bangladesh and the government decides that we're going to have a deal with Germany, and we'll tell Germany that, hey, you buy garments from us and we will buy machinery from you. And there were some people in Bangladesh who were trying to produce textile machinery, and then their industry just goes out of business because they cannot compete with the German machinery coming in, especially if the Bangladesh government is supporting the import of German machinery, because the Germany government is supporting the import of Bangladeshi garments. So these guys who are trying to produce textile machinery will lose, right? So the benefits, overall benefits of trade are definitely there. the overall benefits of trade outweigh the losses from trade. But within the economy, it's not the same for all stakeholders. Certain producers, certain consumers, or maybe the government might not benefit or not benefit at all equally from the trade. Which brings us to the costs, right? So it creates certain income inequality. Maybe the people who are experts in garments will start making more money than everybody else because that's the focus of the government, and that's where all the international foreign exchange is going to start flowing in. Or if we take the example of IT industry, when it picked up in the early 2000s, if you guys, some of you might have heard of the dot-com boom, and then of course there was the dot-com bubble burst as well. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a dot-com boom, and I remember young people, they were driving Porsche Carreras 911 GTs, and they were just software developers. So in Silicon Valley, so the point is that it creates potential income equality because the benefits of trade are not distributed evenly across all the different segments of society. And the ones such as, I gave you the example of textile machinery manufacturers in India or Bangladesh. Think of wine companies in Belgium in the earlier example that I gave, or chocolate companies in France. So if the French government decides to focus on wine, then the people who are making chocolate go out of business. And if the Belgian government decides to focus on making chocolate, then the people who are making wine go out of business, right? So they might be forced to exit. And this is what happened to US textile industry. And before the textile industry, it was shoes. So it was shoes first that went out, then it was the textile industry that went out, and then it was the laptops and the computers and then the TV and all this semiconductor oriented manufacturing that went out. And then now, of course, the US is focusing on software. God knows what's next. So this is something that that happens. It's a cost of trade, right? But overall, what one should focus on is that, again, coming back to this slide, that the benefits outweigh the overall benefits outweigh the losses. However, there are certain costs that we need to be aware of. So we're going to stop this video here, and we'll pick up in the next video with respect to how do countries put different restrictions and what type of agreements they have to facilitate international trade, and what type of restrictions they put to stop international trade to protect their local industry.